Hello and welcome to Property Feed webinar series. Today we're talking about development applications with an insight from a town planner, Aaron Sweet from Consult Planning. So what is Property Feed? Property Feed is your platform for building relationships in the property development industry. We connect consultants and contractors to clients, and we provide a forum for property development education. Your event coordinators, myself, Dan Everett, and Caitlin Thomason. If you want to check out some future events in person and also our future webinars, please jump onto propertyfeed.com.au. This content mentioned today is for information only and should not be regarded as professional advice. If you have any specific projects, feel free to contact Aaron or myself direct, and I'll field any questions through to Aaron that you send through to events@propertyfeed.com.au. So a bit about myself. My name is Dan Everett. I'm a property development manager, work for Everett Property Development Management. I started in industry as a registered architect, designing and documenting buildings. And now with qualifications in real estate and project management, I specialize in client-side project management and superintendent services. So what does Everett do? Everett, we assist clients all over Australia, and specifically within New South Wales and Queensland mostly, with clients' property development portfolios in those areas. So I'm happy to review any sites that you have for listeners on today. Just feel free to contact me via the website on the page, daneverett.com.au. So we're fortunate today to be joined by guest speaker Aaron Sweet, who's a town planner. How you going, Aaron?
Good, Dan.
Thanks for joining us, mate. I'm really excited to run through a few case studies with you today. So Aaron works at Consult Planning. He's a director and founder of Consult Planning and has almost 22 years experience in the planning and development industry. He has held roles in both local government at City of Gold Coast and in the private sector. Aaron has extensive experience in all facets of development of all scales and has some great insights into the development assessment process. He was one of the first risk smart consultants working with Brisbane City Council in the pilot program in 2005, involved in streamlining development assessment processes. And Aaron is also a registered planner and active member of the Planning Institute of Australia. So thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate you joining us today. So a couple of topics that Aaron and I will run through. DA or development application. So development application process. We'll look at code and impact. Some tips that Aaron will share with us on successful development applications, and also some tips for reducing timeframes. And we'll go through a handful of case studies as well. If you have any questions through the process, feel free to email, and we'll make sure we get a response to those to you. So the development assessment process, I'll briefly go through this. So you start off generally with a business case or a feasibility study. And that will then give you the confidence generally to acquire. So after acquisition, we're looking at a period of designing, and then we're getting heavily involved with someone like Aaron and getting ready for our town planning development application submissions. That's that DA phase there. Then you move into a second tranche of pre-construction authority applications. So a further refinement of detailed design and a lot more post-DA authority applications. After that, you go towards a tendering phase. That's generally tendering for a construction contractor, a marketing, pre-sales or lease, depending on your strategy, and then finance approval for construction. After construction, we have a completion phase, which involves things like plan sealing, titles, settlement, and then the following defects liability period. So what is a DA, Aaron, and when do you need a DA? Can you help me on this slide?
All right, so try not to complicate things too much, but so there's various types of development applications. So generally in the industry, we'll refer to planning applications as generally reconfiguring a lot, which is subdivision, boundary alignment, easements. Your use approvals are generally material change of use, and then we've got operational works, which is predominantly landscape work, engineering permits, so on and so forth. What a lot of people don't realise is both plumbing and drainage work and a BA or building approval, they're also development approvals. We make things a little bit easier in the industry, and Dan will attest to this, that we usually, some reasons single out BA as separate, because that's fairly commonly known as something that's done by private certifier. A lot of your development application triggers are generally under a planning scheme. Some can be under state legislation, but generally it's the planning scheme. But the anomaly there is typically your operational works. They're often triggered by conditions of approval. So there are a few exceptions. Some planning schemes will have advertising devices. They'll also have things like changing ground level or filling an excavation, and they might also have landscape work. So they're kind of the exceptions there, but generally the operational works are something that's triggered by a development approval, and the vast majority are usually engineering. They're a little bit more difficult to work out when they actually apply. It's a little bit of suck it and see, and your consulting engineer will probably be a little bit vague as to what may or may not be triggered based on their experience. We can get caught out from time to time.
Yeah. And I think if you are struggling to understand as a listener do I need a DA? You know, council do have a hotline, and also town planners are happy to field calls to review this. Also, certifiers are good insight as well. But I find a lot with certifiers, they're bouncing back to the town planner to just get that sort of DA review done. So I'll just go to this next slide to keep us moving. So let's have a look at this process here. So this is a code accessible development application with one information request and no referral. So we've got an indicative time frame of 3 to 6 months. This is not a specific project, but I think it's very relevant for if you're doing a reconfiguration of lot or a townhouse development. You know, you push and pull the timeframes, but this is pretty much a standard sort of benchmark to if you've got a good job that's only going to have one information request, then I think this is a reasonable time frame. So Aaron, can you just give us a brief run through on lodgement onwards, on, you know, how you're walking through this process?
Yeah, so look, one tidbit I'll give people listening is I from time to time get strange inquiries. And they certainly don't feel strange to the person making them, but they do to us. Quite often I'll have clients from the outset wanting to acquire a site, and they ring up and they ask for, look, I definitely need a risk smart assessment. What I would advise people is never assume that you're going to be eligible for risk smart. And the reason I say that are these are people that don't have a design. They might be looking at a subdivision, they don't have a lot layout or some form of material chain of use, and there's actually nothing to assess. So usually in that acquisition phase, we'll always tell clients to factor in their schedule and holding costs for a standard DA, because majority of the time, things don't always completely comply, and that gives council the discretion to knock us out and kick us into this standard process that we've got on the screen.
Yeah.
So basically the process for code, so code assessment as well is a type of application that the scheme basically they identify that it's intended for the zone. It's got certain codes and parameters. The Act basically provides that anything that's code accessible, if you meet the intent of the code, it must be approved. Council just cannot give you a refusal. There's a few exceptions there with state referrals and the like, and if there's particular things that could override that, but as a general term, it has to be approved. And we can talk about that a little bit more detail later. So basically the statutory timeframes. So applications made, council have 5 days to issue an action notice if it's not properly made, and that's generally triggered. Logan and Ipswich typically do that on the basis of fees not being paid. That's their mechanism. So then they'll issue an action notice saying, we do not accept your application as properly made. These are the reasons: either owner's consent's missing, although I said Ipswich and Logan will always say, hey, you haven't paid our fee. But then here's our invoice. So off you go. So all applications, code and impact, have a confirmation period. So that's 10 business days. Unless there's a referral or it's impact accessible, we don't actually require a confirmation notice, but a 10 business day confirmation period does apply. From that point, there's a 10 business day information request period. Now, if we jump over the middle of the slide to the next period, 25, 35 business days, council decides the application. With the information request period, some cases council don't know if they need more information. So that period can actually elapse and result in the council saying, hey, guys, we've actually reviewed a bit more detail. Specialists have come back. We don't actually need an information request. So then it goes straight into decision. If an information request is issued, there's a 3-month time frame for us to respond. We can seek extension if we like. Now, the next part of the slide, the 25 to 35 days decision-making period, is actually 35 days less any time taken to make an information request. So if council do issue an information request and take 10 days, that decision-making period actually drops to 25 business days. Again, mechanisms for extension by agreement. Another thing that applicants should be aware of, and it comes up from time to time, one of the two of these case studies actually would have come in handy. There's an opportunity to do what we call a stop the clock, and we actually have the ability to stop the clock on a decision or an application at any point for a total of up to 130 days. And that can be done through a single notice or multiple periods. I've got an application at the moment with a client who didn't comply with their approval on a house build. And we've tried to go on to modify and deal with some compliance matters, and council have seen certain doom and indicated refusals coming. So we've actually used the stop the clock method to cease council from lawfully being able to make a decision. So that we can get into detailed deliberations. And there's a few examples. We had a commercial shopping centre extension again. It was certain doom. Council said, look, there's absolutely nothing that you can do to stop us refusing your application. And through stop the clock process, better presentation, additional information, we did actually end up getting approval on that one. So that
I just got a quick question on just aware of time. Questions come in. How long does council have to give an NOA to enable you to pay to make it properly made?
So action notice is 5 business days. So there's certain criteria. Generally, owner's consent. Operational works doesn't require it, but ROL and MCU does. But MCU and ROL absolutely needs owner's consent. So there's certain things that are required. There's statutory form completed. Owner's consent where required, and the application fee is nominated in the council's fees and charges. So for any of those reasons, that's when council can actually issue a action notice, say, hey guys, we do not accept your application as being properly made.
So impact assessment, still one information request. We're introducing public notification, and we have no referral in this example. Indicative time frame of 9+ months. So I've tried to highlight here in red the sort of key change when we're looking at impact and public notification. You want to talk through a bit of this, Aaron?
Yeah, so the two differences are that with an impact application, there's always a confirmation notice. So all applications have confirmation period of 10 days at the start. But with code accessible application, or any application that has a referral, you will get a confirmation notice that identifies the referral agency, which typically it's always state assessment referral agency. There's a few anomalies with Ergon and Energex and the like, but all impact applications, even though referral, will always get a confirmation notice. The other difference with impact assessment is we do have 15 days public notification. Now that can actually go to 30 business days if we're doing what's called a variation approval, which I like to refer to as a quasi-rezoning. They're not as common as most impact applications, but there is a mechanism in the Act. The other thing to, I guess, be very clear on with impact assessment is it's a merits-based assessment. There's no guarantee of approval, and that's something that we cannot stress enough in the due diligence period. So a few keys to chances of success are if the land uses are listed in the table of assessment for the actual zone, it's an intended or anticipated use. If it's not listed at all, it's generally not anticipated by the council for that zone. So that's a little easy way to kind of differentiate as to whether something has a high chance of success or not. But at the end of the day, impact assessment is merits-based. The other thing to be mindful of is code accessible applications don't have third-party rights of appeal. So if you happen to put an application in that's code accessible, it's on PD Online. PD Online generally has inbuilt mechanisms for comments. Anyone commenting on a code application doesn't have any opportunity to appeal against the decision. There is a declaration provision, but that's seldom used. But with an impact application, anybody making a properly made submission during that public notification period, they can lodge an appeal against any decision. So it can be against an approval, also against a refusal. So the 9 months that we're mentioning there, impact, you can rush one through. If there's no information request, you're straight through public notification. You can get in and out in less than 3 months. That's pretty rare that occurs. 9 months is quite realistic. The key to it is with impact, the submission is not an objection. So if you have a lot of community support for what you're doing and you actually get positive submissions, so submissions that are in support, all of those submitters also get those rights of appeal. So we end up getting an approval for argument's sake, and that could take 4 to 6 months, or depending on complications and negotiations. When the decision's actually made by council, you don't have an effective permit if there's been submissions received. So we always need to factor in that program that we could be waiting 4 to 8 weeks after an approval is actually issued before we know whether we've got an appeal against the decision that was made and or an effective approval. So that also has implications for lodging your subsequent approvals, like operational works.
True.
Some councils will accept them early. They certainly won't decide them until your permit's effective. Other councils won't even accept them until you're sort of through that submit or appeal period.
Yeah, no, that's good insight, Aaron. Thanks for running through that. Let's jump into a few case studies. So I chose this one because Aaron and I were collectively involved in this project. I'll just explain the scenario and then hand over to you, Aaron, to explain what our solution was. But Aaron and I were approached by a landowner that proceeded with developing a site that at the time was a two-staged development with quite a large material change use for an apartment project next door to this home. What the landowner ended up doing was, he was meant to connect 2 existing character homes together. However, the builder ended up extending one of the character homes, and that was quite an issue when the certifying council were coming on site to review and try and sign off on that. What it ultimately means is that the landowner cannot lease it and cannot sell it. So sort of stuck in a situation where there's a home, can't lease, can't sell. But there was also a few things a few sort of curly things that we had to fix, which the crossover wasn't properly in place. And the car parking solution was based on getting the apartment development to be complete with parking around the back. So Aaron and I came in and came up with a solution, and basically the landowner said to us, Aaron and Dan, we need to get a tenant in here as quick as possible. Can you help me? So what did we do on this one, Aaron?
So we had a bit of a challenge on this one. So the original layout actually had parking for this house in underneath. So just to the bottom of where that house is shown on the slide, there was a driveway coming in and 20 odd units, and the driveway actually continued down, and then we had parking that was elevated in the undercroft. So this site actually has overland flow path, quite a significant one along the rear. So the client presented it to us, thought it would be very easy, and say, look, we'll just do all of that, and we'll put parking on grade, and then we'll elevate it later. Now, obviously, the parking didn't have flood immunity, so Dan and I put our thinking hats on and sort of thought about and thought, well, look, this thing's a house. You can have parking and an independent driveway for a house. So we end up looking at bringing that driveway on. The other really weird thing is that we tried to modify the permit and actually bring in staging, because that was a big issue the certifier had. The approval that they were doing the extensions under, not only did they extend the house and not tack another one on the end, it actually did include the 20 odd units as well.
Yeah.
So the certifier sort of said, hey, I'm not real comfortable with this. This isn't a staged approval. So initially, and we agreed to council to disagree, initially Dan and I and the client agreed that we'd go in and try and do a minor change to bring staging in.
Mm.
Now, I cannot stress enough to those watching that we're finding, and I've had some planning and environment lawyers and a lot of other people in the industry, we're finding now, because there's two change application types, that a lot of councils are taking the opportunity to send us down the other change route, which is basically a full DA, but you're changing an existing approval through it. Now, the anomaly on this side is that the units were impact accessible, the house was code. So we had council officers saying, hey, this isn't a minor change, and trying to force us through public notification of a change to the house. So look, it got to the point in the end where we ended up running a new development application for the house. So it stood alone, and the client got his outcome and his building final and tenant, and presumably was happy ever after. So
Yeah, but it was a good outcome. Like, I know the slide doesn't show, but this was quite a complex site. But you know, Aaron and I walked out of this with 2.5 months. The developer dealt with constructing the car park and the crossover and had it tenanted shortly after. So it was a good outcome. Let's have a look at this one. So this is a case study that Aaron from Consult Planning has been involved with. I'm involved with it at the moment as well. We're just dealing with the post-DA process currently. So this one was a ROL 1 into 3, and it included MCU, means material change of use. It included an MCU. This one was in Chermside, so Brisbane City Council. It was impact accessible, and Aaron achieved a DA approval within 10 months. And you know, this one had a bit of complexity for to deal with. So do you want to talk through what the solution was on this one, Aaron?
sure. 10 months we're not proud of, by the way, just so anybody's sort of thinking, hey, that's not great.
Yeah.
This was a situation. So a lot of you will know that, so this is actually in Chermside. So a lot of you probably cringe to know that. So this was a bit of a situation where we had a client who was starting to do work in the Brisbane market. They had a particular product they wanted in mind. And most of you will know that Chermside, the banks just won't talk to you. So this site was actually is actually zoned, allows a 4-story apartment building. So we all know that no one's going to get finance for that, and there's saturation of the market and the like. So the client really wanted to go for the missing middle, and their initial intent was 4-bedroom, single-story dwellings to allow people to age in place. So those downsized still want 4 bedrooms, double garage, so on and so forth. It's a bit of a difficult task. At first, we had to convince council that undercooking this thing was good, and the missing middle needed to be supplied. And you know, if you wanted to wait out for your 4 stories, good luck. It's going to be the next cycle thereafter. And this, you know, had a house that was basically needed to be demolished. It was in very poor condition. These jobs, whilst they're small and whilst we've all got lots of experience, they sometimes can really throw a curveball and have a lot of challenges. So 10 months is reflective of that. Site coverage ended up being the battleground, and this is only 52%. Now, I can attest to myself that a lot of us have had 60% approved under the multiple dwelling code, but with Brisbane's future blueprint and the community consultation and the townhouse ban and everything that's been going on, we've seen a massive recoiling and I guess recalibration of council with respect to how they're assessing things. Too much in my view. I'll probably agree with that. So we're all for balance, and yes, things were getting out of hand in some contexts, but now we're finding that it's very difficult to get performance outcomes, but we finally managed to on this. So this product, for those that are interested, is actually it's basically 3 4-bedroom houses. One ended up being 2 stories just to help council with the deep planning and site cover, but they'll actually end up on their own freehold lots. So some of you out there have probably seen the marketing guys using the term freehold townhomes. This is the anomaly that city plan allows. So you can actually have multiple dwelling units on their own freehold lot, 0 body corporate, which is a massive advantage out in the marketplace. So that's something you should all keep in mind. The key to it is that council will hold you back on your plan ceiling until the building's built. And that's because you're creating developed lots that don't meet the minimum lot sizes for the zone. This is more common in LMR. This is not generally anticipated medium density res, which is why we had to go impact. They still want 800 square metre lot size regardless because of that higher intensity intended development. But yeah, definitely worth looking at in LMR for any of you that are active in that space. There's a lot of flexibility that Brisbane City Council will actually allow you to use in your titling and
Yeah.
configuration if you're creating
And
developed lots.
I think what's interesting with this one is that you'd want to try and achieve, like, I guess you'd think, oh, why don't we just do an ROL 1:3? But in this instance, council probably wouldn't
You
have
wouldn't get
approved
it.
that and required you to go down introduce the MCU component, get an architect involved to actually document the plans. So yeah, there was a bit involved in this one. So I'll just go to another
And
one.
if we,
So
yeah,
yeah, you want to, yeah, we'll have a chat about this one. So this is a childcare center and drive-through retailer. So it had a material change use and a reconfiguration of lot 1 into 2 with an access easement. This is a different council, so Moreton Bay Regional Council in Albany Creek. Aaron was involved in this one, so he can share a bit of insights, and we got 2 slides to run through this. So Aaron, tell
it's
us a bit about this one.
yeah, this project's really a testament to our client. And whilst planners, we're commercially minded, some more than others, we also don't necessarily know all the detailed feasibility on things. So this particular client already had a commitment from a major childcare operator. So anyone that knows it, this is Albany Creek Road. It used to be the fruit shop site. So it's actually bordered by 3 frontages. So it's quite an interesting one. So the initial intent for this site was to develop the childcare centre, where they already had a commitment there, and then on-sell the site, which would likely be fast food. Now, the whole site's only 2,600 square metres, and those of you that have had any involvement in childcare centres, for a single-storey centre, you'd want nearly all of that to get to 75, sort of to up to 85, 90 places. So the childcare centre on this one's actually 3 stories, so it's 2 stories with a sort of undercroft parking. Mm-hmm. Knowing Moreton Bay, and this is where it's good to have a planner who's actually got some good insight into how actual councils operate. I knew straight off the cuff that Moreton Bay Council are dead against drive-throughs, just your standard drive-through fronting your street frontages. I've had issues with them on other projects. So we strongly recommended the client here and said to them, I said, look, my fast food regular clients, if they came to me on picking up a 600, 700 or 800 square metre site or whatever it is, in Moreton Bay, 3 street frontages effectively, I'd tell them not to touch it. Don't touch it with a borough site until you've got a development approval, because it's too risky. Because Moreton Bay are very heavy on the aesthetics and interface to the street. So this client, like I said, testament to them, they took that on board. Not only did they agree to go and achieve the approval for the fast food, they ended up getting a tenant and developing, and it was very successful. Doing that also gives you the ability. So it was a staged approval. So they could have on-sold that corner site to any fast food retailer with an approval, which gave them certainty. Selling the vacant land, absolutely no certainty at all, a lot of risk. So it also gives you the flexibility to move boundaries and do things and be flexible. This originally had 2A access in off Albany Creek Road. And I think on the next slide might show you the difference. So originally we had a proposal for just that a single easement through a centre driveway. Main roads would give us left in, left out access to Albany Creek Road. It ended up being left in access only. And that easement diagram you see there is actually what Moreton Bay Regional Council did to us in the development approval package. So they said, look, we're concerned that your different uses will be sharing car parks. So we want the childcare car parks to be used by Hungry Jack's out of hours. We want Hungry Jack's car parks to be able to lawfully be used by the childcare centre during their peak hours. We acknowledge they'll be on different lots. We want to secure that and make sure that can happen. So that gives you the flexibility to do that by having some foresight and sort of thinking, where do we want to end up with this site, and what are the risks, what are the constraints, and what are the opportunities to not kind of look further forward. You can really start to miss out on some opportunities. And this client could very well have ended up with a site on the corner they just couldn't do anything with.
Yeah.
Council basically ended up getting us to do tunnels through the majority of the drive-through. So the drive-through actually looks like a commercial building facade to a large degree, and we'd flag that to the client from the outset. So you've got some real challenges here. I think you're best to do the value add and to at least at minimum secure that fast food approval yourselves.
That was a good outcome. I just wanted to jump in, and just aware of time, we've got a few minutes left, but do you want to talk us through this service station and retail redevelopment? Different council this time in Ipswich City
So this
Council?
one's in Rosewood. So Rosewood, anyone that's been out there has a fair bit of character behind it. We inherited this project off another firm. They ended up ceasing their involvement for some unknown reasons, but we actually didn't. This is one of those ones that I guess is a hard-fought win. So we went from council being dead against the proposal to sort of looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, doing some problem solving, which we're good at from time to time, and said, well, you're worried about character. How can this thing work in but still meet council's requirements? So there was a few traffic, landscape and other issues, but it was predominantly about building aesthetics. So we went from a standard service station, very bland facade, something you find anywhere in a suburb, to start looking at, well, what's the character of the area, bringing in some of those elements, weatherboard cladding, pitched roof profiles, a bit more of a traditional parapet style, signage opportunities and whatnot. And council, and to their credit, were that we totally turned them around. They became very supportive, and subsequently ended up with what became pretty good approval. This one's under construction now, so I'm sure we'll all be pretty interested to see how it turns out.
Yeah. No, that's a good insight on that one. I like a lot of service station sites. It's sort of, they're all pretty much the same, but this one you really had to tweak the elevations, didn't you, and really work at that to get this one across the line. So
Absolutely,
it was a good one. Let's got a couple of minutes left, but I thought during so this video is this webinar's being screened during COVID-19, and we're getting changes rapidly. So what we talk about today is going to change in the future. But do you want to run through some of the key things that you've seen come out lately, Aaron?
Yeah, so quickly, a few things have happened the last week or fortnight. So public notification, we used to just have to publish the newspaper advertisement and newspaper generally circulating in the locality. So generally the Courier Mail was good for any project in Queensland because it's widely available. So we could, in those areas where there's Quest newspapers, use those, or Courier Mail, which, it was a client preference. There's an amendment to the Act which applies till the end of this year. So we now must use a local paper. So if there's a local print paper or a local digital paper, such as in the case of what's now happened to Quest, we must use it. So we can't use the Courier Mail. So it's become quite specific to try and target those local areas. So that's a pretty big change. The other thing that's happened only a matter of days ago is the Planning Minister has automatically extended all development approvals that were in effect on the 8th of July for 6 months if they were at risk of lapsing. So that's good news. Plenty of DAs hanging around. BCC's actually, Brisbane City Council have done quite a few things in the last couple of weeks for stimulus. At the moment, domestic scale applications, which are houses, home businesses and the like, you're actually not having to pay an application fee. So that's a massive stimulus. That was getting up to about $1,900. So huge benefit there. They're also introducing a dedicated house assessment training team with a view of fast tracking things, particularly with the home builder grant, and making sure there's no bottlenecks in the pipeline there. There's a new building instruction hotline that's now live. There's also free pre-lodgement meetings. So if anybody was worried about paying the $590 odd or so to have a pre-lodgement meeting, definitely worth considering. That will in time assist in fast tracking your application and also assisting with your due diligence. So extension of time for certain development applications, and the whole incentive for councils really to try and speed up applications in the system, get them shovel ready so that ultimately it's filtering through to the building construction industry as quickly as possible.
and then reduced minimum value for bonding. So I just want to make note that it's the 10th of July 2020 at the moment. So, check in with myself and Aaron as these things progress, and keep an eye on your local council website. So please keep in touch, everyone. www.propertyfeed.com.au. We will share this video to viewers after. So just send me a message if you want a link to it. So Aaron, we got about a minute. So what can you leave us with? What is probably a key tip you can leave us with?
I think get a town planner involved up front, particularly in that acquisition phase. So also, I think things are changing rapidly with assessment. So again, like I said, people ring up and say, I want to do a risk smart project. Well, it's not a case of doing that. So I think it's a case of getting some really good quality advice from the outset, and getting advice that's not sugarcoated, because in the long run, that doesn't help anybody. So, what is the risk? Let's quantify the risk, and then let's make decisions accordingly, and base it on your appetite to get in there and have the fight, or to try and go for something that greases the wheels and is likely to breeze straight through because it's highly compliant and consistent with what council are generally wanting to approve.
I agree. I think, like, when I do the initial feasibility work, if the site's acquired or not, it's glorified this risk smart process that gets an approval so quick. But you have a quick chat with someone like Aaron and myself, and we'll quickly tell you what the realistic time frame is going to be. And it might be 1 year plus. Like, that's the reality of some development applications. But it's good that while you're using your due diligence, you just talk to people that know the council. So anyway, thank you, Aaron.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. And if you want to contact Aaron or myself, our website's on the link on the screen there. So thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Cheers.